Welcome back to this summertime 19th episode edition of the Always Bayern Chelsea show. It's been a little bit since we've been able to be in the same room and recording, so thanks for sticking with us and welcome back.
Yeah, it's been a while. The fans out there are probably thinking, where are these guys? We do have lives. It's summer. Crazy things happen. In Milwaukee, it's a busy time, so...
That's right, and if you want a little peek behind the curtain here, today's my first day off of work in 13 days, and a lot of those were nights photographing different events and things, so it's been a little hectic, but there's no place I'd rather be than right here, talking about some soccer, because in this world of, I guess I can say football as well, we have constant rumors and news, and now the Euros are starting, so there's always something to be talking about.
Yeah, summer's a crazy time because in football, as you mentioned, there's so many rumors. It's crazy the amount of rumors. You have all these reporters that are based in countries of players, whether it's a South American young talent or a guy like Matthias de Ligt in the Netherlands going to the Euros. You have all these reporters all over the place. Some are legit, some are not. Some might be legit but aren't even big enough so people don't think they're legit. And then you got the one main man, Fabrizio, that's trying to handle it all. And you mostly trust what he says, but he's still not always right. So it's just a crazy time.
Exactly. And I try to keep up with, especially for Bayern Munich, I try to keep up with what the German media is reporting. But again, like you said, there's nobody that's 100% correct. And a lot of times you think, these are all rumors. How true can they be? Sometimes I think when there's smoke, there's fire, so you got to kind of piece together your own version of events. So we'll be here this summer, covering everything. So why don't you, give us a rating on the podcast apps. Check out our YouTube channel, Always Bayern Chelsea, for some videos that'll be upcoming here soon. And check out the Twitter, too, because we'll try to keep you as updated as we can.
Yeah, I'll probably start tweeting more about some of these rumors as things get finalized. I've mentioned in the past that June 30th is an important day for the Premier League calendar year, so we'll start ramping that up. But yeah, right now is very interesting, and we just kicked off a massive tournament in the world, the Euros. So we got all the teams in Europe fighting for the title as the best European country, essentially. And it's awesome because you get to watch players that are on their domestic teams, whether it's Bayern, Chelsea, or any other team, really, in Europe or around the world, and you get to see them play in a different environment.
Yeah, a different environment with different teams, different coaches, maybe some of the same coaches, but oftentimes things are a little bit shaken up, so it's fun to watch, and yeah, like you mentioned, the Euros kicked off last night. I guess last night in Germany, afternoon in the United States. June 14th, Friday, June 14th. Today is Saturday, June 15th, and we'll probably have this up later on today. So we got a lot to talk about regarding the Euros, but yeah, things kicked off yesterday in Germany. That's where they're being held, kind of all throughout the country. But the first match was in Munich at the German football stadium, or whatever they have to call it, because they can't say the Allianz Arena.
That's right.
Home of Bayern Munich, the Allianz Arena. We can say it. We're not being crushed out by sponsors, but yeah, Germany took down Scotland in the opening match, 5-1. It was really just all Germany. It was a complete annihilation by the German squad, which features a lot of Bayern Munich players. So I guess from my standpoint, that was kind of nice to see.
Yeah, I watched a solid amount, kind of in the middle portion of the match after a couple goals had been scored. I think I started watching right when Scotland picked up a red card to get down to 10 men. And really, as the announcers kept saying throughout the match, really poor plan by the Scottish team. Not that I'm going to go into detail here, but going against a giant like Germany in the Euros, they probably should have been a lot more defensive, and they weren't. And you could see from the get-go, those talented German players were really going to take advantage of that. And it showcased a lot of their talent. Some of those guys being Bayern Munich players, which was great to see. But yeah, they're so talented. I texted you that I think they could potentially be the favorites. I know they have maybe some things behind the scenes that you disagree with them being the favorites, but I think they're so talented playing in their home country. If they get things rolling, and this was a great start, they could definitely go far.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely up there. Germany's an interesting case of a team because the last couple of years, and I guess the last couple of international tournaments even, they have not really shown up. There's been, yeah, just kind of some changing in the coaching position and a lot of veteran players kind of coming and going with different coaches deciding how to use them or how to not use them. So it's kind of interesting. But if you look at the attack that Germany has, I mean, you really can't go wrong with these two youngsters, two of the youngest bright stars in world football, Florian Wirtz and Jamal Musiala. And then, you have some veteran leaders that are key in the midfield, obviously Toni Kroos and then Manuel Neuer between the sticks. So, I mean, there are the elements that you'd want to see on a team who's going to compete on this world stage. But, after that first match, if Germany can play like that, then sure, they'll be up there. They'll be competing with France, England, these top teams. So we're gonna see. Germany kind of, I think, has one of the easier groups. I think there's a good chance now, especially with this first win, that they'll get out of the group stage, which is good for them.
Yeah, Germany's on my list in my top 5, I'd say, of teams that I'd like to watch the games, partially because they got some Bayern players, but they're so talented and exciting, as I mentioned. I'd throw England on there for some of the same reasons. I'd throw France on there because they're so talented. You had Spain and Croatia playing earlier today. They're both interesting. I would say they're in the group of death with Italy and Albania. So whoever gets out of that group is probably going to be either built to win or tired because they had some tough games. But lots of interesting things could happen. I'm actually in a little pool with some people I know where I picked all the games. So it's going to be kind of interesting. I might actually watch more than I originally thought just now that I have a little stake in it. Only $10. Gamble responsibly, of course.
Yeah. So I guess, if you're someone looking in from the outside, I guess, so to speak, on the soccer world, the Euros might be a good place to kind of jump in. It's exciting because it's tournament style. It's just over the summer here. It's not a huge commitment, and you have games. You have three matches a day all the time. Like, it's going to be exciting, and then maybe you pick up some of your favorite players and you kind of start to watch them as the club season comes around.
And you can even watch from a political and world, I don't want to say war perspective, but you have a team like Ukraine that is dealing with all this heartbreak and in the middle of this intense battle with Russia, and they're still throwing a team out there. They were able to qualify on one of the last days on a late goal by Misha Mudryk, of course, against Iceland.
Yep.
But they're going to be awesome. They have a pretty solid team, actually. Mudryk is on that team, and I'm going to watch for that reason. But they have some other guys that play in the big leagues in Europe, so they could be a threat. But, these other reasons besides just soccer are reasons to watch, whether it's interest in the history of some countries or just from a world perspective.
Yeah, I mean, this tournament is massive, in Europe, but really throughout the world too. I mean, it's a similar format to the World Cup, which obviously everybody knows about, except, you're just getting teams from Europe in this tournament. So it'll be a fun one. And yeah, stay posted with us, and we'll keep you updated.
Yeah, and we'll also keep you updated on Copa America once that starts in about a week. I would say I'm arguably more excited for that from a Chelsea perspective for reasons I will disclose maybe in the next pod.
Wow. Well, you better listen to that one then, because we're going to leave you on a cliffhanger. But yeah, I guess the last thing I really want to say about the Euros for now, I guess about Germany, is there's a couple players from Bayern that I just like to give some flowers to from the match yesterday. Yeah, Jamal Musiala also had a goal. He had a great goal there. And Kimmich had an assist. And then obviously, like I said, you have Manuel Neuer back there, and Leroy Sané got some time. Thomas Muller got some time. So it's just going to be good to see these guys playing together, and especially since the Euros are in Germany, it's going to be fun.
Are there people that call Musiala Bambi, or is that just somebody that I follow from Chelsea?
No, that is his nickname. And it kind of seems like he's maybe a little bit grown out of that nickname now, especially when he was younger, just the way he dribbles and kind of his frame. Yeah, that Bambi is his nickname, but he seems to not mind it, although I think he kind of knows that he's kind of growing out of it.
Yeah, it's definitely a nickname you get when you're younger and have longer legs, I would say. That's kind of the stereotypical deer fawn perspective. So I think it's a good nickname, though. Even as you get older, it's kind of funny, and especially as you turn into a deadlier player. Then if you go by Bambi, it's almost one of those cool differences that can be a good name.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on Germany. We'll of course keep an eye on England just to see if Harry Kane can break his trophyless curse. But I don't know. I'd kind of like to see him do it on Bayern Munich, but obviously, best case scenario for him is to just do both.
Yeah, England's interesting. I told you I am not necessarily rooting for them, just because I think it's funny when they don't do well, similar to my thoughts on the United States of America, to be frank. But I'm going to be watching those games, have interest in every player on that England squad, whether it's because they're rivals or Chelsea players.
Well, you got Palmer and Gallagher.
Yeah, I don't think either of them will start any games, maybe that third group game or something if they already have 2 wins. I think Palmer's going to be that first impact player off the bench probably.
Yeah. I mean, man, he could really do some damage. If you think about it, England really has a stacked team. But yeah, as far as I know, they haven't won anything in a long time. And that's kind of the thing with them is like they have this talent, but for some reason they can't put it together.
Yeah, how many times are you going to hear, "It's coming home"? Because
Yep.
I think Euros and World Cup, they say that, so they must have won one of the first ones or something and think it's coming home when they get the trophy, but really it's just a dumb statement when you say it over and over and keep losing.
Exactly. But yeah, so there'll be some other fun teams to watch. Maybe on your own time, look up everything you want to know about these teams because there's really just too much. But yeah, there's a few more Bayern Munich players in the Euros too. You got Matthijs de Ligt that we talked about on the Netherlands, which I think the Netherlands might be kind of a fun team to watch. I wouldn't mind maybe rooting for them a little bit. Yeah, and you got Upamecano on France. I think Kingsley Coman is on the French team. I don't know if he's completely healthy yet, so I don't know if we're gonna see him very much. But yeah, then you got a couple more Bayern players that really missed out on the squads because of their injuries. Serge Gnabry, for one, he didn't get called up to the German team, and an unfortunate scenario for Alexander Pavlovic, who did get called up to the German team, and similar to prior to these friendlies, this happened as well, but he got called up to the team. I believe he's 20 years old now. I think he just turned 20 like a few weeks ago. He was really exciting to watch, looking to make his first start for his country. Kind of a similar profile to Toni Kroos, although Toni Kroos is a legend, so I'm not saying that lightly. But yeah, now Pavlovic comes down with tonsillitis once again, which is the same injury that kind of hampered him right after he really made a meteoric rise for Bayern Munich. So it's a shame. And this injury/illness, I guess, infection, it really wears him out. Like, even when he's practicing and starting to play again, he clearly needs some time to get back into things. So he was dropped from the national team for that reason. And I just hope that guy gets his tonsils out, because this is, I think, his 3rd or 4th bout with tonsillitis. It's kind of crazy.
Well, it sounds like he's probably going to have the money to pay for it, because him and Bayern are talking seemingly about extending his contract, which
Yep.
can only be great news for him and the team.
I think they want to extend him to 2029, and I think they also want to extend Stanisic to the same. Yeah, it'll be interesting. So Stanisic was loaned out to Leverkusen last year, which many people say was one of Tuchel's worst decisions as coach. He really turned it on for Leverkusen, and more importantly, I think, he is a player that just has that clutch gene, which you saw with so often with Leverkusen last year. They'd score in the 90th minute or whatever, but that was coming from Stanisic quite often. So I'm excited to have him back on Bayern. He's another young, exciting guy.
Sounds very exciting. And as I'm looking at my notes here, all the players listed, I did want to just note a special player on Bayern that is playing for Austria. Of course, Konrad Leimer.
Yep.
Great to see him on that team. And then just to go through the rest of the players from Chelsea, we mentioned Gallagher and Palmer on England, of course. Cucurella, who just played today for Spain, was getting a start at left back. I didn't even realize he was going to start, so that was awesome to see. You technically have Armando Broja, who's probably on his way out from Chelsea, but he's playing for Albania. Lukaku is technically a Chelsea player under contract, playing for Belgium, even though he hasn't played in a couple seasons and will surely be out once again next year. Then you got Petrovic in goal for Serbia. I think they play against England, so that'll be cool to see if he gets to start between the sticks. And last but not least, a man I mentioned near and dear to my heart, the blonde firecracker, the Ukrainian Misha Mudryk.
Very nice. I guess I should mention one more too, because I'm just thinking about the Bayern players. Hopefully I didn't miss anybody. Alphonso Davies is, I believe, captaining the Canadian team. At least he was in these last couple of friendlies. I don't know if that stands or whatever for the Copa, but yeah, that'll be cool to see. I hope he can have a good run there with Team Canada.
Yeah, a couple Chelsea guys in Copa as well with Argentina and Ecuador. And yeah, I was also going to mention Netherlands because, once again, on a technicality,
Ian Maatsen,
yeah, who originally made the team, but then when they whittled it down to 26th, got cut. They had a couple injuries. Frankie de Jong, one of their best players, Barcelona guy, and somebody else got hurt, so they brought Maatsen back. That'll be interesting because he is wanted by a lot of clubs. Dortmund, who he played for on loan. Bayern was rumored to potentially want him. Decent amount of other clubs, maybe in the EPL and other spots in Europe. So if he plays well, if he does get time, that is only a good thing for Chelsea. I don't think at this point they'd keep him, but whether you then keep him or can sell him for more would be interesting to see, especially when you got Dortmund, who frankly is known as a stingy team, and they're already saying they don't want to pay more than 20 mil for him, which is absurd.
Yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah, no, I agree, and Dortmund's an interesting team. They have quite a few players on Germany as well, as you would expect. But they also, after making the Champions League final and then losing to Real Madrid, are looking at quite a bit of turnover. There's a lot of these veteran guys who it looks like they're kind of on their way out, whether that be because they just need a change of scenery, but most likely because, like you said, Dortmund is kind of looking to turn the page, maybe being a little bit stingy at some of these positions. So I don't know. They'll be an interesting team to keep an eye out for next season. I'm very excited about the Bundesliga next year, but that'll be in a future episode. I don't think I have any more notes about international play, really, unless you want to say anything else.
My only other note is staying on Dortmund. I just think it's hilarious that you sell guys like Haaland and Bellingham for so much money, and you're not willing to spend that money.
Yeah,
crazy.
I don't know what their ownership is like. Honestly, maybe there's, who knows, some sort of financial turmoil going on, but yeah, I guess that can kind of segue into what I wanted to talk about with Bayern Munich, because I've kind of been gathering my thoughts and I've kind of been going back and forth for quite a while about this, but I'm starting to notice some pretty glaring if you ask me, red flags about this new regime at Bayern Munich, which includes the new head coach, Vincent Kompany, and then board members Max Eberl and Christoph Freund. So I want to kind of go in on that and just start with the caveat of a lot of these are rumors. You don't necessarily know what's true and what's not. But after months, or at least a couple months now, of seeing stuff kind of creep out through the German media, a lot of these guys like Politigol, or however you say his name, who are reputable sources reporting on things, you can kind of start to piece things together. And as I said before, I think where there's smoke, there might be fire.
I got to say, as you're introing this, we might be venturing into a little bit of true crime, because the words you're using, we got red flags, rumors. Sounds like you're becoming a little bit of a private detective, private investigator here. And I respect it. I mean, listen, you always got to go to these different sources, find little holes and cracks in institutions, of course. And it sounds like that's what we have here with Bayern Munich. So I'm excited to hear more.
Yeah, this is, it's going to get juicy. And I also wanted to say, too, that, I try to be positive about things for the most part. I was even trying to be mostly positive about Kompany when he was signed. Obviously, it's a big risk for Bayern. We'll see how it turns out. But from what I know about his style of play and his leadership, I like all of those things. So just to put that out there, I don't want this to sound like I'm just ripping on Kompany, but yeah, let's jump right into this and kind of rewind the clock back a little bit. You have Bayern Munich looking for a coach. They sacked Thomas Tuchel. The season's still going on, and Bayern are kind of, running through their options. They're, now down to their fifth or sixth option. And what I said right away when it was announced that Thomas Tuchel was getting sacked, all right, everybody's first option was Xabi Alonso. Everybody wanted him. I think you would be dumb to not want to go after him. Bayern goes after him. He says he's staying at Leverkusen, okay? Then at that point, and you might as well go back and listen to our past episodes, because I know I'm recorded saying this. At that point, I was saying, okay, out of the options now, I would like a return to Hansi Flick. He's proven himself as the Bayern Munich head coach. He knows the locker room. He has been like a caretaker coach before. And, now there's reports out there that he was even ready to agree to a 1-year deal with Bayern Munich, maybe to prove himself, maybe to be a caretaker until these guys that they really want to get as coach become available, whatever. So you have Hansi Flick available and ready to be coach for Bayern Munich. And it's also reported that the old guard, Uli Hoeneß and, all these other guys were ready to put their past beefs with Hansi Flick behind them. They were ready to accept Hansi as the head coach again for Bayern Munich. Now, the new board members, Max Eberl and Christoph Freund, who are kind of in charge of the team right now, in the team direction, sporting direction, all that stuff, they say no. We don't want Hansi Flick. We want our own guy. We want to kind of start fresh, and we want to take this club in a new direction. So they go and get Vincent Kompany, who, like I said, I think I like his style of play. We'll see what he ends up doing at Bayern Munich, but I think he seems like a great leader. He seems like he has a good style of play. It's a huge risk. He's a young coach. He's only coached for these lower-level championship, teams. Burnley into the Premier League last year, now relegated. But yeah, so you get Kompany, and now things are starting to come out. Kompany has a lot of decisions to make. I guess I should say Kompany and then the Bayern board. And by the sounds of it, Bayern is going to go through quite a bit of a squad overhaul, which you think, okay, maybe they need a refresh at some positions. But now when you see the names of guys who are linked to sales, linked to other teams, that essentially it looks like Bayern's willing to sell and wanting to sell, frankly. Guys like Kimmich, Goretzka, Gnabry, Coman, and now reports of Matthijs de Ligt, who is Bayern Munich's best defender, looking to be sold. And you kind of start to think to yourself, Company seems like he's becoming a yes man for these new board members who are looking to just make a name for themselves and essentially sell off all of Bayern's old leadership. All of these guys who perform when it matters and have won trophies for Bayern Munich and have been integral parts of these teams that, restored all this glory to Bayern Munich and made them what they are. The most important voices in the locker room who could potentially, maybe not always agree with what a coach is going to say. And, you might be thinking to yourself, well, the two biggest leaders on the team are Manuel Neuer and Thomas Muller. I'm not including them in this because they both have 1 year left on their contract, and it's pretty clear that they're going to kind of be forced into retirement at that point. Maybe they just will want to retire, but yeah, I'm getting a little bit worried because I don't think you can just get rid of your best leaders just like that, and replace them with guys who maybe aren't as proven.
So there's quite a bit to unpack there. I could take this a few different ways, but one of the things that stood out to me was the phrase and term yes man that you used. I find that interesting just because it's been thrown around a lot lately with a lot of these managers that are coming in. Also relates to the debate about whether you are titled a manager or a head coach, how much you should be sticking to coaching or managing the team, being a part of the decisions that are made with buying players, selling players, how you're setting up your team, how much you're talking with the ownership. If you are talking with ownership, are they listening to what you have to say? Are you just taking what they're saying and implementing that into your team? A la a yes man. I think it's very interesting just because there's a lot of different ways to build a team and to build a franchise, if you will. A place like Bayern Munich, where you've had so much success for so long, I would think that you'd have a better system in place, culture in place of how your organization is run and how your team is run. It sounds like right now there's so much kind of discontent within the directors and the people that run the team. There's maybe different ideas of how things should be run and how things are run. It's tough, I think, for Vincent Kompany to come in while that's going on.
Yeah, it'd be tough for anybody.
Yeah, whether he wants to bring in his ideas or maybe he wants to be a yes man for a while. And that term shouldn't be maybe used because it makes him sound weaker. I don't think he's necessarily that way. But I also think it's okay for some guys to just want to coach more. I think at certain points you have to start off kind of just being the guy that focuses on that, the X's and O's of the game, building that first. And then as you gain respect from not only the ownership and the directors, but the fans as well, then you've earned that right to have more say with buying, selling players, and maybe even other decisions that are higher up.
Totally. And I think especially when you're a younger coach like Kompany, and maybe that's a little bit too harsh of a term. Who knows? Maybe in that phone call that Eberl and Kompany had, they're truly just completely aligned, and that's why Kompany said yes to doing this job within the first 5 minutes of that phone call. Maybe that's why Eberl essentially is risking his job for Vincent Kompany, because let's be honest, if Kompany doesn't work out this season, most likely, Eberl and Freund, I think, are gone. The old guard of Bayern Munich who still has influence, the Uli Hoeneßes, they're not going to put up with another wasted season, quote-unquote wasted season for Bayern Munich. From their standpoint of success, a wasted season is just a trophyless season. So, those guys aren't going to put up with that, and you can guarantee that if this season doesn't turn out, then Kompany is going to be gone. Freund and Eberl are probably all going to be gone.
So you say these two guys, Eberl and Freund, will be gone. Is their setup, remind me, is it some sort of board where the other members would vote them off?
Yeah, it's a board, and I believe that's how it works with the voting, because you had so prior to this regime, I guess you could say, you had Brazo and Kahn, and those two got I guess fired. I don't exactly know if fired or voted off what the exact term is. But yeah, in the Bundesliga, you technically, yeah, you have to have like a 49% ownership stake. You can't have one person or like one group just be the owner of the team. So I guess that's a little bit different. But at Bayern Munich, you have, and this is part of the reason why the coaching search took so long. You have all these cooks who have all their own ideas. Um, we love talking about cooking on this show. So, you have so many cooks in the kitchen, and it's just it's hard to have a unified vision and a unified front, I think.
Yeah, I think we've talked about ownership structures in the past and how they're interesting, and some are effective, some are not. There's pros and cons to everything, whether you just have one guy calling all the shots or you have multiple guys bringing ideas in. I don't know if there's one right answer to everything. With most sports organizations and leagues and teams, there's multiple ways of doing things. Some have sustained success, some do not. Bayern's had success for a long time with a structure like this, and even if there's changes happening, I still think they'll be fine in the future. And they're too big to fail, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
That's a term you hear a lot in the banking industry, but I really think it's true for Bayern. When a team like that has so much money, resources, power, and fans around the world, they're not going to fail for too long if you count coming in third as a failure.
Right. So, that's also important to keep in mind. And that's kind of what I wanted to get off my chest about Bayern Munich, because I've been hemming and hawing about this for a while. There were rumors of this so-called squad overhaul happening for quite some time. And I think that they do need a refresh on some positions. I think the winger position is one of those positions where they're going to need a refresh. I think Coman will probably be sold. As much as I like Gnabry, and I would actually like him to I guess not re-sign because he still has a contract, but I'd like for Bayern to keep him. It wouldn't kill me if they sold him, just because he's been very injury prone. He's been very up and down these last couple years. It kind of sounds like Sané is gonna stay. He might take a little bit of a lower contract actually. But yeah, that's the other interesting thing. You got all these guys who Bayern, I guess, if you believe the reports, are trying to kind of push out the door, but their contracts aren't up. So you can't just push them out the door. And some of these guys, it's rumored that, Goretzka and Gnabry, they want to stay. So it's going to be weird to see what happens with that. We can probably talk about that a little bit later too with Chelsea and Conor Gallagher. But I decided I needed to come on here and talk about this stuff because the rumors now that Bayern are looking to offload Matthijs de Ligt, that was kind of the last straw for me. And that was what pushed me over the edge to, truly believing, I don't know if you want to call it, before maybe you'd think this is a little bit conspiratorial or whatever, but I'm truly on the side now that Bayern is trying to push out their old leaders. These guys just have important voices in the locker room. And a lot of these guys, I'm looking at Muller and Neuer, but even Kimmich and Goretzka, they've won more than company. They've won, more than these new board members on Bayern. And I don't think they're the type of guys who would really challenge somebody, especially in front of, a lot of younger, newer players. But their opinions do matter, and their voices, like it or not, they've had success where their voices warrant, at least a listen. And that's one way of doing it, is just getting rid of all these guys and kind of starting new and trying to build everything in your vision. But I think selling De Ligt would be such a huge mistake. He's someone who's really put his life on the line, his sporting life on the line for this team. He sat on the bench, he hasn't complained, and then he's come up time and time again and delivered. And the same, I would say, goes for Kimmich and Goretzka. I don't want to sell either one of them either.
I think Bayern's trying to balance something that occurs to most great teams when they've had a dynasty for a while. You tend to have a lot of players who are reaching a certain age, and you want to balance how you move on from them to a younger generation. I tend to believe that it's great to have a mix of both. They've kind of had that mix the last few years. It's worked out. It didn't work out as well last year. A lot was going on last year, though. I still think you can have a mix of both. It's important. You want veteran leadership. You also want young guys with fresh legs. It's a long season. You play a ton of games. So I think they just need to figure out how they want to balance that, how to keep people happy, whether it's players, coaches, most importantly, keeping the fans happy. I think it's a good problem to have. A lot of their problems are good problems to have. When you're a team that's used to winning the league every single year, these are truly, as they'd say, first world problems. In their case, it's like ultra first world problems. You're at the top of the caste system.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is true also, and it's like, I also feel like we have to remember Bayern was minutes away from the Champions League final last year. They were dealing with tons of injuries too. Like this, in my mind, this isn't a team that you need to gut. I think a lot of the problems were, at least in the Bundesliga, were kind of a mixture of Tuchel's playing style, injuries, and maybe some players underperforming. But it just doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth when you are looking to kick some of these proven leaders to the curb and then seemingly bend over backwards for guys like Alphonso Davies or maybe Upamecano, who are prone to making mistakes in big moments. Now, granted, I want to sign Davies. I want Davies back. As much as I ragged on him last season for having such a down season, I want him to be back. Now, I don't want to spend $20 million on him, but I would love it if he just accepted this new offer of a contract, which sounds like it's $13 million plus $4 million in incentives.
You know what I would love is for Davies to put out a reel of all the negative things you said about him and then post it after next season, after he has a great season. I don't know if you saw, Jordan Love just did that with a bunch of people that had negative comments. So whoever his people are that made that, if they can get together and clip the times that Danny was mean to Davies, I'd love for that clip to be shared on the internet, please.
We hurt the ones we love. I would just love nothing more than to see this kid succeed. I want to see him reach his ceiling because it's such a high ceiling. But yeah, I guess with that, I'm going to take a deep breath now, and maybe we can move over to Chelsea.
Yeah, there's a few things I'd like to talk about. First, some breaking news here that won't be breaking once you're listening, but 6 minutes ago, Albania scored in the first minute against the Italian side, which is very intriguing because I texted you within the last 24 hours, I want to say, that Albania was that sneaky team in the group of death.
Wow. Well, Italy won the last Euros, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right. But they've been poor the last few years. I want to say they didn't make the World Cup in the last World Cup, so they're an interesting team. But nonetheless, I'd love to see a team like Albania do well, and a guy like Armando Broja do well, even if he leaves Chelsea. That'd make him probably worth more, which would be good for Chelsea. But yeah, things this summer have been moving fast on the side of Chelsea FC. A lot has been going on. I don't believe we've discussed yet on this pod the official hiring of one Enzo Maresca.
I think we've mentioned it, but we definitely haven't dove into it.
Yeah, so it's been official now for a few weeks at this point. The guy coming from winning the championship in England for Leicester City. A lot of thoughts on that, and I'll dive into it more in a later pod. But just to be brief here, I think coming from Leicester, they had a really good squad. They spent a lot of money on it, and they were experienced, heavily favored to make it back up into the Premier League. So you could use that and say, this is a guy that was given a lot of resources. Anybody could kind of manage that and take him up. I kind of disagree with that just because it really shows that he can handle the pressure and rise to the occasion. And everything didn't go their way throughout the season. They were dealing with a lot of different things throughout the year. So credit to him for being able to handle that. And He's known as this guy that's pretty stubborn with the way he manages and his style. He only plays his style for the most part, doesn't necessarily always adapt. I think that's good and bad. Once again, I'll probably dive in more later, but with that style, the way it plays out over a season, it's good if you're stubborn because you're going to have ups and downs, but it's all going to even out. And if you really believe in it, then I think it's going to be successful. I also think it's really going to help these young players settle into a way that they know how to play. A lot of these guys will be able to say, all right, here's what I'm doing now, and I can expect to play in these spots, and I'm going to try to take advantage of it.
Well, he's also bald, and he kind of looks like Pep, so he joins this army of bald managers in the Premier League, right? I mean, you got Pep, obviously. You got Ten Hag, who is re-upping with Man U, so I guess good for him. You now got Arne Slot for Liverpool. Who else am I missing? I feel like there's a couple more. I guess Vincent Kompany, but now he's in the Bundesliga.
Yeah, and you mentioned Pep. Obviously, Enzo was under Pep at Man City, kind of managed their more developmental players, so he's a Pep disciple. Guys like Arteta, who was a Pep disciple, had success, so that's kind of what clubs are trying to do. It's similar to a lot of sports where they just see one coach and then hire everybody under that coach.
Kompany played for Pep, and it's said that he's of that school as well. Now we shouldn't confuse Arteta with these other baldies because he's got a full head of dark black hair.
Yeah, it pains me to say, and I've said it in the past, Arteta is a good-looking guy. It's unfortunate because I wish that he was an ugly buffoon.
His soul is ugly.
Some people are blessed with good looks. He's one of those guys, but that doesn't mean that he's a good manager.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that if Enzo works out for Chelsea, it is going to be great because he's one of those guys who, like you said, I think a lot of players could really grow with. Similar position to Bayern Munich, where you hire a new kind of a young coach. If it doesn't work out, maybe we're going to be sitting in this spot next year kind of talking about the same thing. Who's the new coach going to be? Whatever, So it's hard because, on one hand, you could get in this cycle that you don't want to be in of just hiring and firing coaches left and right, and you never have any sort of stability. But if you do find the right one, then, you hit the lottery and you win everything you can win.
I do think they're going to give Enzo Maresca time. They gave Graham Potter a 5-year contract. They threw that out the window. I think this is different just because he does come from under Pep. They have a team that looks really ready and willing to compete for a top 4 Champions League spot. So I think they're going to give him that time. But also, it's just because I believe it's going to work out. Even if he's not the greatest fit, the team is talented enough to not do it on its own. But even if Enzo struggles at times to make changes and be flexible, guys like Cole Palmer, they're going to find ways to score anyway and be a great team. And we might even be bringing in more guys. Chelsea's already brought in a great center back that's probably going to be either a starter or a backup, but provides great depth. They signed Tosin, who I won't try to pronounce his last name, from Fulham, on a free transfer, a great bit of business. They're already looking at lots of other options that some I hope happen, some I don't. Sounds like they're leading the race for Michael Olise. We'll see what happens there. It's one of those things with Chelsea, and I won't get into all these specific players that they're rumored, but that right wing spot that they've been targeting with Olise here is just interesting to me, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this because he's a right winger, left-footed, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cole Palmer does well in the 10 and the right wing, left-footed.
He's also left-footed.
You got Madueke, who plays on the right wing. That's pretty much all he does, left-footed. All these guys dominant on the left foot technically are all known for being right wing. Not to mention, you make these 2 massive signings of young Central Americans that are rumored to be
left-footed,
the next greats,
right?
And they're left-footed.
Yeah.
Number 10 right wing guys. You got Kendry Paez, who's 17 years old, already playing for Ecuador. Looks like an unreal talent. but he's left-footed and plays in that space. Then you go out, spend 30 million up to 55 million with add-ons on Estevão Willian, who plays in Brazil, is also 16 or 17. They call him Little Messi Messinho. The guy is unreal, but he's that same position and area left-footed. I get they're technically not on the team yet, but you're investing a lot in them. They're expected to be good. You already have Palmer, as I mentioned, Noni. You might then bring in Elise and spend upwards of 70 million. I just think it seems weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems weird too. Enzo, does he use a 4-2-3-1?
Enzo is a 4-3-3.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I guess, but some of these guys that you're talking about were signed, or at least rumored to be signed, before Enzo even was. So yeah, it's weird to me. It doesn't quite make sense, especially because I think that attacking spot on Chelsea, granted, people don't get injured like they were last year. I think that position is Chelsea's strength. I think they should be looking at potentially midfield if they're going to sell Gallagher, but, defenders. So that doesn't really make sense to me either, if they're, especially Elise, because, yeah, he's going to be 60, 70 million, and that's not chump change.
The argument that you make is he's so talented, you just find ways to bring guys in, especially if he wants to play for you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're going to sell other players too. I mean, I know there's a lot of players for Chelsea that are rumored to be sold, but the guys in that right wing, left-footed position don't seem like the type of guys that would be sold.
I think if they do get an Elise, they would sell Noni if they can. He's a guy you could have for depth, maybe keep him for another year or two, and then these young guys come. I think with this 4-3-3, and I'm still diving in, I've watched some videos on how it all works, but you got those three attackers, but those two wings, they play so wide with how Enzo likes to play. So I think one of these left-footed players you're going to have in that second three spots in the midfield, and that's where it's really going to be interesting, because right now I'm putting Caicedo in no matter what, Enzo as well. And so that third midfield spot, you might want to bring one of those left-footed guys. But if you don't, that's where you'd have a Gallagher if he stays. And It sounds like he's going to stay. And then let's not even forget about Romeo Lavia, who we spent $50 million on and was hurt all last year. I think he's young and exciting. So you have all these options.
Well, yeah, I don't know exactly how this would work, but I believe that Enzo likes to do this sort of inverted like fullback position. Maybe you could do sort of what Bayern started to do with Davies at the end of the year, where it was clear he had these defensive lapses, but he's very good at tracking back and was scoring goals from that left back position. So I don't know, I don't think you can put any of those guys way back there, but maybe you start to swap guys around, and it's technically a 4-3-3, but really things start to get gray.
I will say it does make things interesting. So yes, he loves the inverted fullback. He tended to do it on the right side for Leicester. You can do it on the left too, of course. I think a lot of people are saying if he wants to go on the left, it's going to be Cucurella. He's shown that's his strong suit.
Yeah, or Reece James, I guess, on the right.
People are so excited with the potential for Reece James. Even a Malo Gusto, we're going to see Malo the first 3 games at least, because Reece has a big head and is stupid and got a red card. But Reece for sure, because he was brought up as a midfielder when he was going through the academy. So he has the capability of doing that. Gusto has the potential too. There's so much excitement surrounding this team and the players we have with how things are going to go. Getting into this dominant possession-based football, which can be frustrating at times, but I'm very excited with how it could work out under Enzo. And yeah, these problems I'm talking about, similar to Bayern, they're good problems to have. We're arguing over which top-tier right winger we want Chelsea to have. Yeah. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, man, there's a couple things I wanted to say, but first of all, I'm starting to think about it. A lot of these guys that Chelsea has aren't really traditional winger profiles either. Now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of these guys are really good at scoring and attacking. which is kind of the same problem Bayern has. They don't really have any traditional wingers, which is a little tricky when you have a guy like Kane who you should just be setting up. But regardless about that, that's for a different day. I think truly Chelsea is one of the most exciting young teams in the Premier League to watch. But I was thinking about this as you were talking about all these players. They might be truly my favorite team in the Premier League. Like from an unbiased perspective of somebody who's talking about them a lot, I guess, and looking into them and watching their matches. There's a lot of teams that I don't really like in the Premier League, truthfully. Then there's a lot of other teams with guys that I like, but I don't necessarily like the whole team. I don't know. Something about Chelsea just seems special right now.
Yeah, we got so many guys that have potential. Nkunku, who didn't even get much time last year. Jackson's only going to get better. So a lot to look forward to. My last point on the wings, because you did bring it up, and with those wings, how wide they do play. The other point I'll add is that a lot of times when you're that wide, you could throw a right-footed player on the right wing just because when you're playing more wide, then you have the capability of crossing in with your right foot. Usually you're putting the inverted foot on the right or left wing because you cut in and then you can shoot. And that's why left-footed players tend to be on that right wing. So if things are played that way too, maybe then you can put an Elise on the left wing instead of the right wing. There's just so many possibilities. We'll see in the preseason if things happen. I'm obviously going to be giving a first-hand look in the preseason. My luck, they'll just play all the bench players when I see them in action. But it'll be very interesting to watch how they set things up.
Yeah, I'm going to be following Chelsea pretty closely as well. We got some interesting decisions to be made over the coming weeks, definitely for Bayern and for Chelsea, which I guess one last thing to mention on Bayern, shout out to Ito. Welcome to Munich, my friend. We got a little transfer news happening. I think happened on Thursday, if I remember correctly. Bayern brought over the Japanese player Ito, and I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but from Stuttgart. He kind of plays a mostly left center back. He's also left-footed, but also can play that left back position. So maybe some insurance if Davies leaves. Bayern is clearly looking to offload multiple center backs, at least one, I should say, center back. So we'll see what happens. But he seems like a good little utility player. Not somebody who's going to replace a guy like De Ligt for sure, but a nice signing.
So now that stupid German reporter can stop saying that Levi Kohl has interest in coming to Bayern Munich?
Yeah, that's true. That's not going to happen, I don't think. I think he's happy where he's at, but it looks like Bayern's really gung-ho to sign Jonathan Tah from Leverkusen, so we'll see about that, another center back. But yeah, that might be for another day to talk about since nothing's inked right now. Anything else to say about Chelsea or world football?
I'll add that while I am calling this journalist a fool, these guys get manipulated, and I think a lot of this is really just for negotiation tactics, whether it's agents, players, coaches, ownership. They use each other so much to spread lies or truths, telling people half-truths. It's all part of it. This literally is happening in the NBA right now as well and all other sports across the world. So it's probably a tough business to be in. That journalist, I don't know his name, but I'll be nice to you going forward.
Good. Well, on that note, let's all just be nice to each other going forward. Thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking with us. Keep on the lookout because there's going to be more stuff coming soon. Yeah. With that, I'll send us off. Go Bayern.
Up the Chelsea.